Hi, Des Moines. Greetings from flyover country in the Quad Cities. I love seeing all these yellow flags up here, the Gadsden flags. I need to get up here more often. It's very obvious. I'm here to talk to you about the Articles of Freedom, the works of Continental Congress 2009. I'm going to start by reading you a short excerpt from the Declaration and Resolves of Continental Congress. We demand that government immediately reestablish constitutional rule of law, lest the people be forced to do so themselves. And we hereby serve notice that in the defense of freedom and liberty, there shall be no compromise to which we shall ever yield. So where do these people that started Continental Congress get off writing such a thing? Well, the Bill of Rights, as we all know, is a list of thou shalt nots. It's the government doesn't give us our rights. The Constitution doesn't give us our rights. That's our compact with government not to infringe on our rights that we already have. One of those rights is the last 10 words of the First Amendment. The government shall not infringe on our right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And for decades, many tens of thousands of Americans have been petitioning our government for a redress of grievances. Many of you here in this audience, I'm sure, have filed petitions for redress. From everything from unsound money, violation of privacy clauses, tax clauses, immigration, Second Amendment, you name it. Congress tells us, we pass the law, you go to the courts. The courts hear the petitions, and they say, they admit that Congress's acts have harmed the people, but they refuse to hear the merits of our petitions with "you have no standing." The courts have refused to rule on the meaning of those last 10 words, the capstone right. Essentially, our government is telling us they cannot be held accountable. Well, that's about to change with your help. Last fall, 116 delegates from 48 states convened a modern-day Continental Congress in St. Charles, Illinois. They set about to repeat history. The founders petitioned the Crown for 11 years and got met with repeated injury. That's why they convened the first Continental Congress. They had to get together to figure out a plan of action. It was time for the American people to do that again. And it happened in St. Charles last November. For 11 days, these delegates convened. They worked hard, 16, 18 hours a day. They reviewed the petitions from the We the People Foundation, who's been petitioning for 14 years, led by Chairman Bob Schultz. They examined the evidence, and they came up with a work product called the Articles of Freedom, which documented in no uncertain terms the 14 violations of the Constitution, including violation of sovereignty, private property, privacy, public debt, money, war powers, eligibility, immigration, Second Amendment, juries, income tax, and foreign policy. On April 19th, next Monday, the voice of freedom will be heard from Hawaii to Maine as constitutionalists gather in every capital city to simultaneously sing the praises of America and her Constitution and to serve the Articles of Freedom on her federal and state officials. Join fellow Iowans in Des Moines, here, right up there, on those steps, next Monday at 2 o'clock on the West Mall for the rededication ceremony of the Constitution and pledge to hold our servant government accountable. To get involved, go to www.articlesoffreedom.us and click Register for 419 action. April 19th, Patriots Day, for many reasons. The Articles of Freedom, the works of Continental Congress 2009, include a series of remedial instructions for both the federal and state governments. Instructions designed to restore constitutional governance in America. For instance, this gentleman was talking about taxes. Number 6 of the Articles of Freedom, private property. Our government is violating Article 6, 4th and 5th Amendments. Confiscation of private property for private purposes. Government ownership of non-public use property. Conflict of interest in government possession of parks and preserves, etc. The instructions to our state legislators are to eliminate taxes, discount if you will, on private property, both real and personal, and government participation in energy and environmental markets. Number 7 talks about juries. Our government is violating Article 3, 6th, and 7th Amendments. The instructions to our state legislators, this is a roadmap, people. Require judges to apprise plaintiffs, defendants, and jurors of all of their rights, including the right to a common law jury. Require judges to apprise jurors of their conflict of interest in cases where the state is a party. Repeal laws limiting function and scope and authority of grand juries. These are the instructions that will redeem our republic, everybody. For decades, over many administrations, both political parties have been violating the Constitution and the states have acquiesced. These articles of freedoms need to be served under key elected officials in all 50 state governments. The federal and state officials should comply with these instructions designed to put an end to these violations. If the government officials refuse to comply, the people shall engage in a nationwide, well-organized, proactive, non-violent series of civic actions, including economic sanctions if ultimately necessary, to peaceably procure the relief we are entitled to under our system of governance. Senator Hartsuch spoke earlier. He's reviewed the Articles of Freedom. He recorded a video. Go out and search engine it, Hartsuch Articles of Freedom. And his take is that the federal government is acting unconstitutional. Our state legislator should instruct our state citizens to withhold taxes from our federal government to pay for the services that we're getting the money from the feds from. That's civic action, people. These articles must now be delivered to our federal and state elected officials. We need to go beyond elections, beyond petitions, and frankly beyond tea parties to enforce our rights. Because as we all know, any right we cannot enforce is no right at all. I'm going to wrap up here. We have 200 state legislators, everybody. They need our help. They're not our enemy. They don't understand what they're doing, many of them. Some of them do, but most of them don't really understand. We need to serve